Welcome to the Schools of Excellence podcast, where we transform everyday leadership struggles into powerful legacies that impact generations. I'm your host, Chanie Wilschanski, a 20-year veteran of school leadership who has helped hundreds of school leaders achieve what many thought was impossible through our signature programs, School Leadership HQ and Enrollment Engine. With our battle-tested frameworks and blueprints, leaders have achieved 90% parent retention, 50% less staff turnover, 15% improved profit margins, and increased enrollment by 25%. My mission is simple: to revolutionize school leadership by elevating the skills, the habits, and mindset of passionate leaders ready to create lasting change. Join me as we build your legacy of excellence, one transformative conversation at a time. Welcome back to the Schools of Excellence podcast. Today is a little bit of a different kind of raw conversation. Something that I talk a lot about with clients when I go to events, conferences, roundtables, the kinds of conversations I have on the way to the ladies' room or back from the ladies' room when I'm at events. And it's really about the impossible standard for women inside of schools that are leading schools. And so today I want to have a different kind of conversation about a new standard for female leadership in schools and really unpacking what is yours to hold and what is not. Sometimes leadership feels like you're carrying the weight of 20 people's emotions while you're barely holding on to your own. And leading a school is one of the most emotionally demanding environments in the world, because a school is an emotionally demanding environment, and then leading it. And if you're a woman, the weight is even heavier, because you're not just managing the logistics of a building, you're managing people's expectations and the emotional labor that comes with it. There is a silent pressure to be warm, but not too soft, to be clear, but not too cold, to be strong, but not too intimidating. And so if you've ever found yourself saying, I think I just misunderstood them, I really believe that they're trying their best, I don't want to be seen as too harsh, this conversation is for you, because this conversation is not going to be about me telling you to toughen up at all. This is an entire invitation to reimagine how to look at females in leadership, specifically in school leadership, where you do not have to sacrifice your warmth and your nurturing and your kindness to lead well. So I want to talk about what it's really costing so many women in leadership to lead in this kind of way, because it's not the workload or the staffing crisis. It's the leadership reflex that you have been conditioned to develop as a woman, right? The moment in your gut that says, this teacher isn't aligned, something is off. But then your reflex says, we need to give her another chance. She's just having a really hard week. I'm going to go in and model the behavior again. Or you see a teacher gossiping or an admin taking shortcuts. And instead of addressing it directly, you internalize it. You tell yourself, I'm going to wait until I have the perfect words to have this conversation with her. So you delay it. And while you delay it, you absorb it. Because as women, we've been taught to overfunction. And in schools, caretaking is baked into the culture, and overfunctioning is rewarded. This is why so many female school leaders confuse grace with self-sacrifice and what it's actually costing them. So there's a lot of different research that's been done. I'm going to share just a couple of interesting studies just so you can understand some of the bigger picture context. So there was a study called the double bind dilemma, where women in leadership are caught in an impossible paradox. If they're warm, they're seen as weak. If they're assertive, they're seen as abrasive. And so it consistently creates a force function on women to default to relational protection over decisive leadership, especially in professions like education that are centered around care. There's another study done back in 2000 around Tend and Befriend, and women under stress are more likely, more prone to activate caregiving behaviors rather than fighting or fleeing. And what you need to understand is that this is a biological response rooted in your oxytocin and estrogen. So their male counterparts, when they are under stress, what gets activated for them, right, is the fight response. Women lean towards soothing, rescuing, buffering discomfort when there is a crisis. So when something hits the school, the female leaders go in and say, who can I protect? Where can I buffer discomfort? Who can I rescue? But it doesn't show up that way. No woman comes into school and says, I need to rescue someone today. It's, you need a couple minutes? No problem. Take a couple minutes, right? And the thing is that there's nothing wrong with telling someone to take a couple minutes. The problem is it consistently comes at the expense of yourself, right? Education ranks as one of the highest burnout industries in the US, okay? Restaurants come in very close. And so female school leaders report way higher emotional exhaustion than their male counterparts. So men and women both working in schools, women report unbelievably higher levels of emotional exhaustion. Why? Because the woman is not just managing the logistics, women absorb the emotional labor from all stakeholders, parents, teachers, staff, and kids. And so what it looks like in actuality, right, what it looks like in real life in the day-to-day is you have a staff member who keeps coming late or who keeps bringing drama or is speaking harshly to the kids or unprofessionally. And there's a part of your body that says, this is not okay. But then your reflex says, let me check again. There's probably more going on at home. I don't want to be the bad guy. I'm going to meet with her one more time and give her another chance. If you're nodding or smiling to yourself or tearing up while you're hearing me say this, that's a good thing because it means that you actually have the self-awareness to pause for a second, lean out and say, okay, 1 second, like I need to lean in here. You notice a teacher isn't preparing for their lessons properly, or their lesson plans are last minute, or the children are very disengaged, or their curriculum is not age appropriate. So instead of holding the line, you step in. You gather supplies, you model lessons, you ask leading questions that quote unquote guide her. That is not delegation. It is rescuing in disguise. You overhear staff complaining or gossiping, and instead of addressing it directly, you internalize it. You blame yourself. You say, I'm expecting too much from them. So you bake muffins and you buy bagels and you go buy gift cards or you take everyone out to get Sonic drinks. And now you are both heartbroken and holding resentment that you cannot name. And then when people continue to take advantage, you rage at what's happening. You say to yourself, I am such a kind person. Why are you abusing my kindness? Why are you taking advantage? Why are you turning me into a raging, crazy woman? I don't want to be this woman. I want to be calm and loving and tender and soft and open, but you're turning me into a hard armored shield because look at, right? So you're internalizing that component. So let's go deeper here. Okay. And if this is feeling just emotionally triggering or whatever it is, press pause, come back when you want to listen, or don't come back. That's okay. But please take good care of yourself if you're hearing this and it's too much for you. But I want to go deeper because there's something that lives underneath the overfunctioning that really no one says out loud. Okay. It is resentment. It is anger. It is grief, and not the loud kind, the quiet kind, the kind that shows up when no one is watching, the kind that simmers just underneath the surface, the kind that you don't even realize is shaping your tone of voice, your choices, your facial expression, and your body language. And I see this in leaders that we coach in Leadership HQ all the time. They come to calls, they come into Voxer messages where I'm texting them and they say things, I just feel so tired. I don't know why I'm so short with my family. I love my staff, but I hate coming to work. I feel like I'm failing everywhere and no one sees it. But underneath all of it is the weight of holding too much for too long without being seen. You spend all day pouring into your school. You pick up the slack when a teacher calls out. Again, you smooth over the tension between two coworkers. You stay late to fill out licensing paperwork that your admin assistant said that she would finish. And then you come home and you walk into the door and someone left their socks on the couch. Dinner still isn't defrosted. One kid is on the iPad, another one's crying, and your darling partner is saying, "What's for dinner?" And then something inside of you breaks. Not loudly, silently. And what happens is you start force washing the dishes. You answer with very clipped sentences. You stare at the kid when they complain about the flavor of pasta and your brain is thinking, "Are you kidding me?" And then you feel guilty that you snapped because they didn't do anything wrong. And then you're heartbroken. And then you're holding a resentment that you can't name because you don't resent your team or your kids or your partner. You resent that no one notices how much you're holding. You resent that you give everyone grace and everyone gives you silence. You resent that your kindness is expected and taken advantage of, and now you are invisible. And that is what I call the silent betrayal. You do not resent your people. You resent the way that your patterns have trained them to expect every single thing from you. And when you finally start to pull back, when you stop overfunctioning, when you stop fixing things before they fall apart, they notice, but not with gratitude, with confusion, with pushback, with silence, because they never saw the weight. They only saw the way you made it work. And then when you stop over-carrying, they feel the impact. And now you feel even more alone because no one's preparing you for this. This is so much of the work that we do with our clients in HQ because it's not just about delegation or setting a boundary. It's walking you through what it actually feels like to hold what's yours and release what's not, to grieve old dynamics, to stay steady when the pushback comes, to replace old over-functioning rhythms with leadership rhythms that can protect your warmth instead of weaponizing it. So let's go even further. Okay, let's go a little bit deeper here. So the emotions that you're feeling, right? I was talking to a couple of owners, and one of the trainings that I'm doing inside of HQ is the last 20%. Why do I have to notice before anyone acts, right? And so what burns out so many leaders is not the task. So many of you that are listening to this actually have a great admin team. You have a lot of people on your team. You might have a director, an assistant director, a curriculum coordinator, an enrollment specialist, a regional manager, 2 office assistants, whatever it is, okay? That is not what's exhausting you. It's the noticing. It's the invisible labor. It's the part of your job that no one writes on a checklist, but lives in your nervous system. It's when the corner of the staff room has files because the trash wasn't taken out and no one else noticed. It's the Friday folders went out, but the parent note that you mentioned in the meeting wasn't put inside of there. It's that the classroom smells a little bit off, but no one else checked if the diaper pail was emptied. It's the new teacher who walks in a little bit slower, a little bit heavier, but no one else noticed that to ask how she was really doing. It's the center has this low vibe or this no energy, but the director's like, no, everything's fine. Everything's great. We just did a smoothie bar. Everyone loved the smoothie bar. It was amazing. Thanks so much for paying for the smoothie bar. But no one sees the low energy. So you act because no one else will. And it's not because no one else cares. It's because you're the only one that noticed. I was talking to a client and she's like, it's not that I don't have help. I do. But the reason I'm exhausted is because I'm the only one who notices when something is off. I'm the one who notices the standard is slipping. I'm the one, right? And everyone else waits for me to say something and then they act. Acting is easy. Noticing is the leadership burden that no one talks about. That's the last 20%. That's the part that no one figures out how to delegate unless you start building a team culture where people are trained to notice what you notice, where leadership is not distributed by titles. It is distributed by awareness and the levels of work that go within the 5 gears, right? This is what we do inside of Leadership HQ. We teach leaders to translate their noticing into teachable skills and moments, to build micro rhythms where observation, accountability, and ownership become the cultural defaults inside of the organization. Not just these are the CEO character traits. No, these are the CEO character traits, and they have been installed as micro rhythms inside of all of the people on your team. So they know how to observe, they know how to hold accountability, they know how to do ownership, because you You are not supposed to be the one holding the emotional pulse of the building. Noticing should not equal your nervous system overload. So the real reason so much of this happens is because you've mistaken being needed with being effective. You became a leader because you're a nurturer. You know how to create magic with your presence, with your aura. But somewhere along the way, your nurturing got entangled with your identity. Your nurturing got entangled with your identity. And you started to believe that if someone's hurting, it's your job to fix it. If a staff member is struggling, it's your job to absorb it. If a parent complains, it must be you did something wrong. And in early childhood and in K through 12, this reflex is rewarded. Parents say, "You're the only one who understands me." Teachers say, "You're such a good listener. I could talk to you about anything." The children love you. They run into your arms. But that emotional caregiving has a cost because you start to question your instincts. You override your gut because you're like, maybe I'm just being too sensitive. And then you get stuck in decision fatigue because every choice feels like a moral dilemma. And I know that one hit hard. I know that. I know that many of you listening are saying, oh my gosh, every choice does feel like a moral dilemma. You build a culture of learned helplessness when leaders consistently carry what isn't theirs. Because what happens is the team unconsciously stops carrying what's theirs to carry because you'll carry it. So you start to resent your own warmth and your own kindness. And that is the danger. When your kindness becomes a burden, you begin to pull away from the very gift that made you the beautiful leader that you are. You're not leading with grace. You're overfunctioning to stay safe. And the overfunctioning is almost never conscious. It is a learned survival mechanism. And for female leaders, especially in schools, it starts young. We please the teacher. You keep the peace at home. You become the responsible one. You become praised for being helpful. And over time, that becomes your default leadership posture. For those of you that have followed the podcast for a while, you know that I had a really, really bad season of burnout where I got sick consistently over the course of a year. I got sick over a dozen times. And I had to really, really not just recover from burnout, but I needed a full detox where I never allowed myself to come to that place again. And one of the things that are so interesting when I was at one of our legacy retreats a couple years back, we had a client who was there who had had 2 open heart surgeries. And one of the things she had shared with us in the roundtable when we were sitting there on the couches is she had shared that, after open heart surgery, there's a rehab time. And the rehab is really not just about the rehabilitation after having something as traumatic as open heart surgery, but it's also about how are we helping you create a new calendar, a new set of commitments, a new identity, so you never, ever come back to a place where you need open heart surgery. It's not just about I needed to recover from burnout. I needed a detox of the very things that got me to burnout to begin with, which was overfunctioning, people pleasing, all of those things. And the thing that's quite terrifying, actually, is, and something that is so difficult to sit with, is as you start to let go of these overfunctioning tendencies and start to build more rhythm and more consistency, I felt so exposed because I made a decision that I wasn't going back to that old version of leadership. No more overfunctioning, no more rescuing, no more disappearing in the name of being the good one. But when you stop overfunctioning, the silence can kill you because you just realize how much noise you used to generate. Fixing things that were never mine to be fixed, checking in on people who never checked in on me, constantly checking in on people or connecting or reaching out that was just completely non-reciprocal at all, filling every gap before anyone knew that the gap even existed. And so I needed to feel every inch of that silence. And in the silence, it is so tempting to go back and pick up the slack and jump in and soothe and protect and nurture and smooth things over. But instead, I watched the team member struggle and I let her. And I watched a team member miss a deadline and I let them feel the weight of that missed deliverable. And I read a email from someone And I took 24 hours before I responded. Now that's, by the way, a standard in our company that when we get any emails, we take 24 hours to reply to the client. Always, it sits in draft mode. So we write the email. So it's not that we don't write the email at all. We write the email, but then we keep it in draft mode for 24 hours because a lot happens in 24 hours. And when I really started to embody that I'm not going to rescue people from the consequences of their choices, I'm going to love them through that. I'm not going to take away the discomfort that teaches them what they need to learn. It changes everything. And it took a long time. Recovering from burnout was a 3-year journey. And then refinding myself was another 12 months, closer to 18 months, when I finally was able to return to me, to real me. And what happened is my warmth became my beacon, and it became a beacon of light to everyone that was in my presence, because the warmth marked a new rhythm where my warmth was radiant with boundaries, with generosity, with clarity, with ease. My warmth was not an emergency tool. It was not used as a savior. It was used as a consistent rhythm that built trust with myself, with my team, with the people around me. My warmth did not build dependency. And that is a huge thing that we really invite our leaders to shift, because it's not just about becoming a person who can do accountability, whatever that means, right? It's learning how to identify what is really yours to hold, how to lead with warmth that doesn't burn you, how to build rhythms of accountability that do not rely on your energetic presence. And this is the biggest piece here, because I work with leaders who have 10, 15, 20 locations, or even 1 or 2 locations. And they're like, we've built the systems, we've built the process, we have the accountability. I'm like, yes, but everything relies on your energetic presence. Everything relies, the last 20% is always you. The last 5% is always you. So that's why you're consistently pulled back in, because strategy without identity work leads to another burnout cycle. Strategy without identity work leads to another burnout cycle. So far too many people are obsessed with the right strategy, and strategy is important and the right frameworks is important. But if you're not doing the identity work that comes along with it, you're going to just a new burnout cycle. Okay, you're just literally heading to a totally new burnout cycle. So I had a conversation with another client, and she stepped into executive leadership kind of during COVID. They had merged 2 sites into one. She was overseeing about 60 staff members, 130 families. And this is a leader who really built her identity around grace, around second chances and third chances and 10th chances. And she was telling me, she's like, I thought I was being so kind, but I was really avoiding conflict, right? I was terrified that I would hold people accountable. I would lose connection. And connection is her life force. Right? It's her life force. And so what happened was she was unfortunately betrayed by someone that she trusted. She was accused of time card fraud and all this kind of dragged into an investigation. And what happened is she lost herself in trying to protect everyone else's comfort. Everyone else's comfort. And when we finally started to uncover those things and she was starting to move out of that traumatic time period, I was able to ask her, what is actually yours to hold? And from that place, she was finally able to let go of a staff who wasn't aligned. She spoke up, she re-anchored, and that's how she was able to start leading differently. Recognizing the reflex of hyper-responsibility, of understanding how to separate warmth from rescuing, of how to install boundaries that are anchored in clarity of standards, not guilt. That's how we teach inside of HQ, because it needs to be taught through the lens of the school, your staff, and the season, right? This is not corporate coaching. You don't run a bank. You run a school, and a school is a sacred space. So you need rhythms that can hold your soul and the systems that you've built, right? If this conversation is really hitting you in your gut and you see yourself in all these stories, I want you to know this. You do not have to lead alone. You do not have to carry it all. And you do not have to trade your warmth to be effective. Inside Leadership HQ, we help women in school leadership untangle their old leadership reflexes, install sustainable systems, and build schools that thrive without burning out the person who's leading the school. That's what we do. And the link is in the comments in the show notes for you to apply. But here's what I want to invite you to do here on this podcast. I'm going to give you a couple of journaling prompts that can really help anchor you in this practice. What did I carry this week that wasn't mine to carry? Again, no judging, no going back and fixing it, just noticing, wow, I really carried a lot of things that weren't mine. What is one thing that I can return to or release next week? So next week, what can I release? What's one thing that I can release? Okay, these are journaling prompts. You don't have to do all of them. Okay. Third one, where is my warmth a gift? And where is my warmth a shield? Where is my warmth a gift? Where is my warmth a shield? And lastly, what energy do I want to lead from? Right? I knew that I always want to lead from my warm beacon energy. And so if I want to lead from that place, then these are all the things I need to do to ensure that I'm staying anchored and I'm really leading from that place. Now, you might need to go back and listen to this episode a few more times, and that's fine, or go back and rewind. What I really want to invite you to in this moment is it doesn't have to be this way. And it's not, it doesn't have to be this way. We need to set a new standard. We need to set a new standard inside of female leadership. So what is that standard? What is the new standard for female leadership in school, right? It's not a vision of doing more. It's not about becoming tougher or more efficient or being a CEO. It's about reclaiming what was always sacred to you. Leading with warmth, not as a liability, but as really the legacy you want to lead. Setting the boundary, not to protect yourself, but to protect your mission from burning out. Because your mission burns out when you don't have those boundaries. Releasing that reflex to rescue and instead build the rhythms and the standards that raise others into ownership, right? And this is the work we do inside of Leadership HQ. Build a rhythm of leadership where your body, your time, and your joy and your vision all belong. This is never about noticing everything. That's not the standard. It's about training a team who can see what you see and act before you speak. Please do not hide your heart. Lead with your heart in full view, surrounded by systems and rhythms and people who honor that, not consume it. You were not meant to hold school alone. You were meant to build a school that holds you. And so the new standard for female leadership in schools is building a whole kind of new inheritance where the next generation of women in leadership do not choose between being kind and being influential, where warmth and wisdom and levity, they walk together. And excellence, because that's what this podcast is all about. Excellence is built through rhythm, not martyrdom. That is the new standard, ladies. We're going to build that together. Thanks so much for joining me for today's conversation. If you are loving the Schools of Excellence podcast and have gotten any value out of it for your school, I would love if you can do two things for me. One, subscribe to the show so you never miss an episode. And two, can you please leave us a review? Reviews help other school leaders know that this is the place to learn how to build a school of excellence. And I would be so grateful if you can do that for us. Your help and support makes this show to be able to be listened by the thousands of other school leaders all around the world. Thanks so much for listening, for giving us your time and attention each and every week. And I appreciate that you have joined us.